Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. A very warm welcome to you, Aparna. My name is Shivangi Valke, and I'm the founder of ThriveWithMentoring.com, and I'm joined here by a very good friend of mine, who is also the Associate Director of Talent Management at MSD Pharmaceuticals in Mumbai. How are you today, Aparna?
Yeah, I'm fine, and it's a lovely morning, afternoon here now, and I look forward to the conversation with you.
Thank you, thank you. I think the conversation that we are about to have is, very important. As you know, that Thrive has these, many mentees across the globe, and I think one of the challenges that they've had as they worked with their mentors is quite aligned to the challenges that I have seen in my own corporate roles when people are trying to set development goals for themselves. And I know that you have done a lot of work in this field to help people understand how to set the goals, how to ensure that the quality of goals, is really aligned to what they're looking for, and to ensure that you are making progress in achieving your development goal. Right? So those are sort of the themes that I would like to converse with you around. I think I've had the benefit to have a pre-conversation with you, so we can keep our conversation, pretty focused. What would be your, your advice, Aparna, when people are setting development goals for themselves, be it in a mentoring setting, but also, they're setting a development goal in their careers? What do you think should be the first step that they should take?
Yeah, I think there's a very important word that you spoke just now, and that was career. So the first thing I would sincerely suggest to people is to arrive at their short-term and long-term career goals, because the developmental goals will emanate from there. So
Right.
once you're clear about your short-term and long-term career goals, I think this path sort of becomes clear. I know we are living in a VUCA world today, and long-term goals may be a far-fetched reality, but I talk of long-term as somewhat medium-term today. I think medium-term has become long-term. So short term could be like the next 12 months to 15 months, and long term could be anywhere from 24 months to 36 months.
Right.
So based on your career, So based on your career objectives, you can sit with your mentor or do a self-reflection and arrive at your goals. And there are two types of goals that we always discuss, right? So one is related directly to your functional competence, and those are typically the skills that help you, do your job better. So now this job could either be the current job or the current role or the next role that you are aspiring for in consonance with your career vision, or the short term and long term that you have set, for yourself. So that's the functional competence part. And the second most important part is the behavioral part. And I would give it as much importance as the functional part if you have to progress in your leadership journey. Or, it's not just the corporate world. Let me also clarify that it could be any vocation. You could be an architect, you could be an artist, you could be a teacher, wherever this kind of goal setting with respect to your development is going to help you. So the second category obviously is the behavioral goals, and which are the most difficult to crack in my opinion and in my experience so far. And they could be diverse, right? We were discussing it some time back, right from political skills in an organization to having composure, to presentation skills, to assertiveness, to self-confidence. Since we're on the topic of Thrive with Mentoring and Women, in my experience, coaching and mentoring a lot of hypo women colleagues, I have seen both internally as well as externally, I've seen that self-confidence always emerges as an important, area of development for women. They tend to consciously work on it. I've seen it in across levels, not just at the entry level or junior level, but many senior
Definitely. I think it just manifests itself differently, right? I think when you are more junior in your career, the lack of confidence might be, okay, how do I present in front of a group? But when you are in a more senior level, then you are on the board, maybe even of a company, but you're the only woman there. And maybe you have, a different point of view. So I think and how do you then express that point of view, which might be not a popular one? So then confidence, I think it manifests itself. I mean, the goal is the same, you could say, that how can be I confident how can I be confident in this setting, which is relevant to me as compared to the other person who might have a tougher setting, but it's still linked to confidence. And I really like that you differentiated between, the functional goals. So maybe your goals in terms of becoming a better marketeer, a better salesperson, a better regulatory person, a better architect, whatever. And then the behavioral goals, which, as you rightly mentioned, are far more challenging, right? I would really like to focus on those behavioral goals in our conversation. Because the functional competencies, I think they're very varied, and usually there is more guidance available around, education in the functions, courses that you can do. There are, for instance, if you want to become a project manager, there is the PMP certification. So I think functional goals are taken care of easier. People know a little bit more about the path, whereas it's challenging with behavior goals. So I was just wondering if you can pick up, one area of behavioral goals that we can focus on, and then we can walk people through how they can work on, first of all, creating a high quality goal, and then going about achieving it and monitoring success. So which competency shall we speak about, Aparna?
Okay, so you want to choose the important competency around organizational savvy or political savvy?
Yes, that's an interesting one, and that's, I think, quite a challenging one. So you might know, and also earlier in my career, I have received this feedback saying, "Oh, you need to be more politically savvy," but then you can't really do anything about it because you're like, "Okay, yeah, I understand that theoretically, but what should I do about it?" So that's a good one to pick up, and I think I've also had coaches and mentees over the years who have that challenge, man or woman. I mean, it doesn't matter. What would be your recommendation? How would you go about that? You got that feedback in a 360 or a performance management conversation where they said, you need to be more politically savvy. What do I do with this feedback now, Aparna?
Yeah. So the first thing is, as they say, when you're working on your development, we have this, very famous 70-20-10 approach where, 70% of the learning happens, as they say, on the job, 20% through relations, as in through coaches or people who are subject matter experts and can guide you, or mentors, of course. And the 10% part, of course, is the training or the self-directed learning kind of thing, which could be very diverse again. Knowledge building, right? From YouTube videos to TEDs to book summaries and what have you. So if you typically look at this framework now for this important competency, which is, important at the same time very difficult, if you may say so, to crack or to work on. So the first thing is, do you have any role model in the company whom you feel sort of fits that bill? Okay. Now, the difficulty with this competency is how do you even arrive at a definition? So when we say politically savvy, we are not saying we want to become a politician or something. And definitely we always promote the term politics many times with a negative inkling, with a negative thought process. So we're not even talking of that. We're talking of something very constructive, something very positive, which will help you establish win-win relations and progress in the organization. So first you get your definition correct, and I think that's the place where a person who's like really good at it can help you. So he could be either your mentor or a coach. So you find out a role model, approach the person for that. The second thing, most important thing that they say is read up everything on that topic. So we have a very good book, Wangi, which most of us like really swear by. It's like the Bible on this topic for working on behavioral goals, and it's called as FYI, made by Lubinger. And maybe I would like to show my copy here.
Yes, and my copy is here too. Yes, I mean, this is a very good book published by Conferry and powered by Lominger Competencies. And I have the 5th edition. I don't know which one you have. But yeah, it is really like a Bible because it starts speaking to you about how this skill can be used, or let's say can be underused, can be overused, and how to develop that. Maybe we work with a specific example there around political savvy then.
So a few things that they mention in the book right away, not just for political savvy, but any behavioral skill, Shivangi, is the first step is to read like the Bible on that topic. So which are the important books, TEDs, videos that you could read up on that topic? And today you have a host of web-based resources. So even before you meet anyone or you approach anyone on this topic, That's the first thing.
Yeah.
Second is when when you look at this book, they have given nice definitions, whether it is an unskilled, whether you are unskilled at it or whether you're overused. Obviously, we're talking of the unskilled category. And very nice way that they have suggested is that, say it's a real major area of improvement and you are finding it difficult. So it's not like you have to only work on your weakness, right? You could strengthen your strength too when
Yeah.
you're talking of 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 development and working on your developmental goals. So what they say is that you could look at substitutes. So for example, if I have to take the example of political savvy itself and refer this book FYI, they say that you could look at a couple of substitutes, and I'll just read out a few substitute skills that they have mentioned, and maybe you have them in plenty, and that really helps in building this particular competence. So approachability is something that they have said could be a substitute skill. Then the second substitute skill they have said is boss relationships. So if you have excellent boss relations, maybe your boss could teach you or help you navigate through tricky waters of the corporate world.
Or comfort around higher management, conflict
Yeah,
management, etc. So
yeah,
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 they're trying to sort of say political savvy, which seems like a large elephant. How do you cut it into
yeah,
little bits? And you actually, and I like what you have said in terms of your strengths-based approach, because we can, of course, work on our development areas and go on that journey, but only reach that far, right? So really
yeah,
understanding this, which are, if this is my development area, what are the skills that I can use to mitigate my needs?
yeah,
That is a very useful insight already for you. So that starts putting that into perspective. But can you say a little bit about the overuse of a skill concept? Aparna, what does that mean? Would that mean, like, for instance,
yeah,
some people in the organization, they might be considered to be manipulative,
yeah,
and I don't know if that, would you consider that as an overuse of the skill of political
yeah.
savvy? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And that is the point where actually, it becomes a leadership derailer.
Mm.
Anything in excess, any skill in excess, or if you're overusing it or using that muscle again and again, as it happens even in your exercise regimen,
Yeah.
it of course wears off or it doesn't work in your favor anymore after a particular point in time. So it's
Yeah.
the same thing. So if you're talking of political savvy, maybe then you're not perceived as trustworthy, and maybe those aspirational roles that you're trying for, people may have everything to speak about which is good, but however, this particular thing, which is lack of trust due to being excessively political savvy, or if you are excessively political savvy, there's a danger that you may be excessively diplomatic and not show courage and candor where required, which is so important in today's world, today's business world.
And I
So you're
think
not
that's
able to
what makes
balance.
it challenging, right? Because I mean,
Yeah,
somebody who's politically savvy, they might be reading people better, they might have comfort, but then they're trying to adapt themselves so much to the situation that they are perceived as somebody who might be either perceived as very tentative, so don't really have a view on things. But I think the biggest danger is to be perceived as inauthentic, right? Because you never really
yes,
know, because this person is sort of trying to read the room, where is senior management thinking? You never really know, if you can trust and if you can depend on this person. So I think that
yeah,
that is the overuse of the skill. So that's a very interesting concept. I mean, we started with saying
yeah,
we want to get more politically savvy, that is underuse. Then overuse is like this concept of too much of a good thing. Okay, but let's
yeah,
assume now we wanted to develop that. We have also identified some of our strengths which will help with that.
yeah,
Can you come back to the 70-20-10, because that's a great
yeah,
notion. So what are the sort of things that somebody who wanted to develop that particular competency can do on the job? What can they do in terms of working with other people and relationships? And as you mentioned, I mean,
yeah,
there's a list of books and TEDs, etc., that we can probably leave. But the first two bits, especially on the job, I think a lot of people
yeah.
struggle to say, okay, how can I develop this on the job?
Yeah. So let me also clarify here, Shivangi, when you're talking of behavioral skills, developing behavioral skills
Yeah.
directly on the job may be a challenge without understanding the
What it is.
concepts behind it
Yeah.
or the theoretical underpinnings behind it. So when we are talking of behavioral skills, I'll give a lot of importance to the 20 part and the 10 part.
Mm.
Because when that 20 and 10 part, that 20 is again, just to remind our audience, is learning through relations, through subject matter experts, through mentors, coaches, and 10th part is actually developing the knowledge or the theoretical base around it. So when these two parts are done properly, would you be able to actually demonstrate that on the job? That has been my personal experience as well as my experience, with my own journey, my own development journey, as well as the development journey of the multiple coaches and mentees that I've had over a period of time.
Sure.
So, absolutely, it is necessary that you approach a role model or someone who's a subject matter expert on that topic. You can even work as an understudy. So I know political savvy is a very subtle kind of a very behavioral thing. But maybe you could observe the person, ask the person a few questions that these were the tricky situations that I observed or that I landed myself in. How do I sort of tackle it? How do you tackle it? Those kind of questions can really help clarify a lot of things. And then, of course, I will again emphasize the importance of reading up a little bit. I know reading habits can vary, but then you have to be a smart reader and read a little bit of, say, book summaries and maybe a YouTube video on that topic, maybe 2-3 good YouTube videos on that topic that can really help you clarify a lot. And then when it sort of, gets back to the workplace and you're back at the work and you're encountering those situations, a lot of reflection from your end will help, where you tie up the 20 and the 10 part, where you work on where you work on yourself, where you reflect on the answers given by the role model or by the coach of yours or by the mentor of yours, and hence thrive with mentoring. So I would request everyone to go back to your mentors and seek their advice.
And I think that is the benefit that a mentor brings, right? Because a competency like political savvy, that cannot be developed in the short term. I feel you can understand it, you can start reading about it, but with the mentor you have this iterative cycle, right? So you have understood about the savvy, what the competency means, you've read about it, great. Now you're saying this is the sort of situation that I find tricky. Then you showed some behavior in that situation, you came back and you reflected on it, but then your mentor gives you a perspective saying, okay, so this is what you did, and what was good about that, what did you find difficult, what could you do differently. So I think that and that process, because I think that is the challenge with behavioral goals, right? That our behaviors, they don't change overnight. We might know all the things, we might have the knowledge, but it doesn't really change our behavior. So we need to sort of understand it and go into this process of setting the goal, trying to achieve it, reflecting on it yourself, usually with the help of a third party. I think that's the power of mentoring, right? It really helps that they are able to look at it from different perspectives, because sometimes you might be quite stuck in your story or have a single perspective on what happened, and they might give you many different lenses through which to look at that. So that is really a great example of that. Great. Well, thank you very much. Any last comments you would make on working on a development goal?
So
please go ahead.
So the first thing is having a well-defined goal. It may sound simplistic, but it's important. And the second thing is have a well-defined action plan based on any of the actions from the 70-20-10 principle, where 70 looks at learning on the job, 20 is learning through relationships, and 10 is learning through training or education or knowledge-based resources. So pick and choose your actions wisely in consultation with your mentor. And the third step is have a time-bound action plan. So for a behavioral skill or a soft skill, it may be anywhere from 6 months to 1 year, but you have to be patient. And most important, the fourth important point is consistency, because there'll be many other requirements that will pull you in different directions, but you'll have to show that resilience to work on your developmental goal and the developmental actions and implement them.
I really like that point that you're mentioning, because sometimes we get distracted because there might be 4 different things that you're working on, right? So you really think about what's the most important and then focus on developing that. So really that consistency, saying, yes, okay, I also want to develop conflict management. I also want to develop, I don't know what, another skill. But now if I'm focusing on political savvy, because it needs to become a part of your way of being, right? You're not doing something. I mean, I think that's the challenge with some of these, challenging things like political savvy. It's not,
Yeah,
like presentation skill, which I think is so measurable, but political
yeah,
savvy, using it in many different occasions, that's something about a way of being, not just doing, and that takes
yeah.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, almost it's like developing a life skill, you know. It's
Mm.
not a it's not a very functional skill, or it's not a very outright there in your face kind of a behavioral skill like presentation skills. It's a
Sure.
life skill that you have to develop over a period of time, and they are the most difficult to develop and implement, but it's not impossible. It's possible. And I've seen
Well,
that change in many.
you've seen the changes, yes, and you've shared many stories with me around how you have
Yeah.
seen and how people have then progressed in their career. Well, thank you very, very much, Aparna. I know that because we couldn't do this live, and I knew many people were interested because of some technical issues. There might be some questions coming to us, and I will collect those questions on the various social media, and maybe we can do a Q&A session, when so that it's and another, interactive session, because this was planned to be that. But I think we already have some great input for everybody. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
your time. Have a very nice afternoon.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity, Shivangi. Have a
Yeah,
nice
bye
day
for
ahead.
now. Have a nice day.
Bye.